as of now, in your coaching position on your team right now, how do you prioritize how do you prioritize defense on your team? What, if you were to break it down in percentages, what kind of role does it play overall, just from a high level?
Well, if it's me, we're talking about in terms of coaching, it is a major percentage. It's over 75% for me, and it starts with communicating everything with your whole staff, and then connecting with your players, having your specifics that you're going to do. And I kind of brainstormed last night with some people, and it's just we're making sure we were on the same page in discussion. And it basically comes down to certain things like transition, getting back on defense, stopping the ball, being in what I call ball you man positioning, and it's based upon the individual who communicates it through the coaches, who then communicates it through the players, and then you push them from that point on, and you make it one of the most important things of that. If you're a defensive coach, you make that one of the most important things in your game plan when you start out in practice. That's the most important thing. You want to spend as much time on that as basically possible.
Yeah. So kind of a few follow-up questions there. Where does defense fall in your practice?
Well, let me take it back to a temple, and Mark can come in after I send him this check with all that good stuff he just said about me. But we would start off pretty much with what we call individuals. Bigs are on one side of the floor or one side of the court, the guards on the other side of the court. And we would start off just pretty much passing and catching the ball, warming up, those kinds of things to kind of get your juices flowing into practice. And then we would do some calisthenics, stretching and stuff like that. Then we get right into defense, directly into defense, because coming from a defensive minded coach, everywhere I've been, that was the thing, to get right into the bulk of what's going to help you win games early in practice, after you do the basic things to warm you up, the basic team building things in terms of maybe layup drills, passing, like I say passing and catching, and going from passing, catching, and shooting, going from passing, catching to moving around the floor. You get right into the crust of your defense and how you're going to teach it. And I'm looking at this thing, but I don't have to look at it. And so you basically, again, using that word, go from there, putting guys in positions on the floor that you think is going to help your team be successful, teaching them how to play man-to-man defense before you're going into a zone maybe later on in the year. So they'll have an understanding for where they have to be in position to playing a man instead of an area. A lot of people teach zones, they teach areas, and young men who come from man-to-man places don't know how to just play that. When coaches teach zones, they teach just play this area, play, but what if there's no man in that area? What are you going to do then?
Right.
So you want to teach the small nuances, and that has to be the bulk of your practice, or the beginning of your practice before you get into your offense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And this next one's going to be a two-part question. I actually had it down as like kind of further in the discussion, but Strick, I want you to chime in on this afterward, just on the more on a youth level. But how do you teach team defense on an individual level? As you were saying, you're breaking up your players, and then vice versa, teaching the individuals the team defense, right? So
it's principles.
Yeah.
You teach them your basic principles. Ball you man again. Where they're going to be out on the floor. If Strick has the ball and I have Strick, and you're on the opposite side of the floor, being one pass away or being on the help line, everybody calls it something different now. They call it, and the pros, you'll be zoning up pretty much. And college and high school and grade school, you're being in an area where you're in a position to help your teammate out. So you want to start off with basic things, stance, how wide your feet are going to be, where your hands have to be. Now you can't touch anybody. You want to teach those basic principles, how to even look at somebody. Because And because I learned things early and I wanted to do them, I took pride in stopping people. I don't know if I ever told you, I was never an offensive player from a shooting standpoint growing up. I didn't know how to shoot a jump shot until I was in the 9th grade. So my thing was defending, being able to dribble, and make layups. That's all I could do up until my 9th grade year. So I learned early how to read people. I was taught it, but I learned early how to do it, where to put a position. If you couldn't dribble with your right hand, then you're going right all day. With me as a 4th grader, I'm not talking something that I learned as a 7th, 8th, 9th grader when I got high. No, as a 4th grader, I was taught early. And I believed what my coach said because he communicated it, and it worked. I had success doing it. So I learned that early, and I put that in my bank. So I would start by teaching young men positioning and stance like we were all taught to begin with, how to get down in the stance, how to have your hands, where to look. Never look at the ball. Always look at the stomach, because that can't go anywhere. Then when you learn to do that, now you can read the ball. Now you know that most people have to bring the ball through the middle of their body to shoot it. Very few people can bring the ball from a different position to shoot it. So now you learn where to place your hands if you want to steal. Those things you learn, but you have to teach them all the basics: feet, hands, and body positioning. Then you go into your team, the team building stuff. Ball, you man, like I said earlier, positioning in terms of help line, those kinds of things. When you're teaching, and that's the basics of teaching youth. That's the basics of teaching young men, high schoolers. That's the basics of teaching professionals. When they want professionals to know, and college guys, they want you to know already when you come to school, so they have less to teach and they can go on and do the other things.
Yeah. But it's the learning gap from my experience between high school and college was so great. So big. You know, you're talking about having great coaches that taught you this in the 4th grade. Yeah, I definitely had some great coaches that helped me out along the way with certain aspects of my game, but the learning gap once I got to college was, learning everything over, which took a lot of focus, and a lot of just the mental aspect of the game was a lot more overwhelming, I remember. Mark, what about you, in regards to how you've kind of worked with your high school age player, your son, now that he's going into college? You know, how has that, how has the defense grown, and what kind of tactics have you used with him, throughout his career so far?
With him, it was a little different. I'm 50 now, and I still can get in the lower defensive stance than him. But so like Macon say, everybody's different. His stance, I have a lower stance because it works for me. If the low stance doesn't work for him, he doesn't come much around higher. So the individual part, I kind of stick with that. Working with Hoop Dreams of America, I work from 12th graders all the way up to 12th graders. So I kind of teach the same thing: stance, getting your own individual stance. Some people like their feet shoulder width apart. Some people like them wider. Some people can play with them wider. Some people like to play with their hands. I try to teach you one hand in, and you have a guide hand, an out hand to try to help you that way to catch the move. That's what we call it down here. Call it catch the move. We're trying to catch the offensive player's move. And once you catch his move, you can kind of control where he goes. I really don't get into the individual aspect until they get maybe to a teenager. I'm kind of starting to work with my son on that, watching film. We've been watching a lot of film. I'm trying to teach him how to watch film. Film is a big help when it comes to defense, because film don't lie. I mean, you hear that on every level of basketball. You can actually see on film what every player does. You can actually see his foot movement. Some people tap before they make a move. He may, do a crossover middle move before he goes into his regular move. You can see all of that on film. But I usually start with the basics, which is stance, and I think everybody starts with that stance. Every person is individual person is different.
Definitely.
So I try to work with that and try to build off of that. Give my viewpoints on what I learned on that.
Gotcha.
Let me piggyback on that, because everything Strick said is right. Individually, people are not going to be as a talent, so you have to teach them how to be and where to be I'm glad that Strick talks about film. It is important to help the youth study, learn how to study. in these new ages, people have they're talented, but they can only do one thing. A lot of guys, 90% of the guys I've watched play only go one way. They don't have any counters. They have, I'm going right, and that's what I'm doing. I'm going right, then that's what I'm doing. I'm going left, and that's what I'm doing. They don't have counters. You don't have what I call, and Strick knows this, breakdown players. A player who can get his own shot when he needs to and when he has to. One of my favorite players is the player from Seton Hall, Powell, because he can get his own shot. He doesn't need a lot of space, but he can create space. Those kinds of things. You have to, from a team standpoint, you have to really love a team like Villanova because they all play the same. They do the same thing. You run at them, they pump fake it. You know what I mean? Once they get in the lane, they're gonna jump on. They're gonna stop on both feet. They're gonna pivot. They're gonna pump fake. You know, they're gonna try to draw someone in and kick the ball out to somebody on that 3-point line. You know, and that's every single player on their team, from the first guy to the last guy. They all do the same thing. So they all look alike. If you go back to when we played, we all looked alike. We all had the same kind of look. Everybody looked like our coach looked, with the exception of his scowl. Everybody looked the same on the floor. And so when you get into that and teaching guys that from an individual standpoint, you got to understand that Strick could be farther away from you and still get out to you and block your shot. Whereas Donald couldn't do that. He couldn't cover enough position, enough ground, because of his speed. Strick had different kinds of speed. Whereas one of our other teammates, may his soul be rested well, was the same kind of guy, Mick Kilgore. He couldn't cover the ground that I could cover, or maybe Vic could cover, or anybody else. So he had to be in a position, to where he can get there. So he might have to be closer. He couldn't be, if you were a scorer, all the way on the help line in the middle. He might have to be 1 foot in, 1 foot out of the lane, so he can recover to a guy.